There is a kind of danger that never announces itself. It doesn't arrive with aggression, raised voices, or visible threats. It comes quietly, wearing the face of kindness, carrying the language of concern, and moving through the spaces of your life with patient, calculated precision. It sits beside you in meetings, smiles at you across the dinner table, and volunteers to help when no one else will. And by the time you realize something is deeply wrong, you look around and discover that the world you once knew has been silently, methodically rearranged, and you are no longer at the center of it. This is not a story about monsters hiding in the shadows. This is a story about the most socially intelligent predators in human history, narcissistic psychopaths, and the invisible architecture they build around the people and communities they choose to control. Understanding their methods is not just intellectually interesting. It is one of the most important acts of psychological self-defense you will ever encounter in your life. Most people imagine that dangerous individuals are easy to identify, loud, aggressive, obviously selfish. But science and lived experience tell a very different story. Research in psychology consistently shows that the most effective manipulators are not the ones who dominate with force, but the ones who seduce with charm, manufacture trust, and engineer loyalty before anyone suspects a single dishonest motive. They don't take power by fighting for it. They receive it, handed over willingly by people who genuinely believed they were helping someone worthy. Think about the last time someone entered your life or your workplace and seemed almost too perfect in the beginning. Too understanding. Too available. Too aligned with exactly what you needed in that moment. There's a reason that feeling exists, and there's a name for the psychological process behind it. It's called idealization, and it is the first tool in the manipulation playbook. Before control can be established, trust must be manufactured. And before trust can be manufactured, the target must feel seen, valued, and uniquely understood. Narcissistic psychopaths are extraordinarily skilled at creating this feeling, not because they genuinely care, but because they have spent their entire lives studying what human beings most deeply desire, and reflecting it back like a perfectly angled mirror. The question you must begin asking yourself is not simply whether someone is kind to you. The deeper question is, what do they gain from your trust, and what disappears the moment you stop giving it? The foundation of trust has been carefully laid. The next phase begins, and it is far more subtle, far more calculated, and far more difficult to detect than anything that came before it. This is the phase where the narcissistic psychopath begins to expand their influence, not through force, but through a process psychologists call triangulation, the deliberate introduction of third parties, comparisons, and carefully placed narratives designed to reshape how people within a group perceive one another. They begin to have private conversations. They begin to share selective information, a quiet word here, a concerned whisper there, always framed as loyalty, always disguised as care. I'm only telling you this because I trust you. I just want you to know what people are saying. I don't want to see you get hurt. These sentences feel like protection. They are in reality the first bricks in a wall being built around you. Consider a workplace scenario that plays out in offices, organizations, and institutions across the world every single day. A new colleague arrives. They are warm, attentive, and immediately make themselves indispensable. They stay late, volunteer for tasks, and seem genuinely invested in the team's success. Within weeks, they have developed close individual relationships with nearly every person in the group. But crucially, those relationships are kept separate. Each person believes they share something uniquely special with this individual. Each person has received a slightly different version of events, a slightly different impression of their colleagues, a slightly tailored narrative designed to serve one purpose, to position the manipulator at the center of every relationship, while quietly ensuring that no two people in the group ever fully align with each other. This is not coincidence. This is architecture. Psychologists refer to this pattern as the hub and spoke model of social manipulation, where the manipulator becomes the central hub through which all information, trust, and emotional energy flows, while the surrounding individuals remain unknowingly isolated from one another. And here is what makes this so devastatingly effective. Every person in that environment believes they are making their own free choices. No one feels controlled. No one feels manipulated. Everyone feels understood, valued, and connected. to the manipulator, and increasingly disconnected from everyone else. By the time the pattern becomes visible, the emotional architecture is already deeply embedded. Allegiances have been quietly formed. Doubts have been carefully seeded, and the person who points to the manipulation first is almost always the one who appears, to everyone else, to be the problem. So what do you do when you begin to recognize this pattern unfolding around you? The first and most powerful step is also the most counterintuitive one. You do not react, you observe. Because the moment you react with anger, accusation, or visible distress, you hand the manipulator exactly what they have been engineering from the very beginning, a reason for everyone else to doubt you. This is why awareness must always come before action. And awareness begins with understanding one fundamental psychological truth. Narcissistic psychopaths do not fear confrontation nearly as much as they fear exposure through calm, quiet, collective clarity. Their entire system depends on keeping the people around them emotionally activated, individually isolated, and informationally dependent. The single greatest threat to their architecture is not an outburst. It is a group of grounded, self-aware individuals who begin comparing their experiences with one another. Start paying attention to how information flows in your environment. Ask yourself, who always seems to know everything about everyone? Who positions themselves as the bridge between people who never seem to speak directly? Who benefits most when conflict arises between others? Who always has a perfectly framed story that makes them appear reasonable, loyal, and misunderstood, regardless of the situation? These questions are not about paranoia. They are about pattern recognition, and pattern recognition is one of the most protective psychological skills a human being can develop. Researchers in behavioral psychology have long established that our greatest vulnerability to manipulation lies not in our weakness, but in our strengths, our empathy, our desire to belong, our instinct to give people the benefit of the doubt. Narcissistic psychopaths do not exploit your flaws. They exploit your humanity, and that means reclaiming your safety requires not becoming colder or more suspicious of the world, but becoming more deeply, precisely, and intentionally self-aware. You must learn to distinguish between someone who genuinely values you and someone who values what your trust gives them access to. You must learn to notice not just what people say, but what consistently changes in your environment when they are present. And above all, you must never forget that the most powerful position you can occupy in any social environment is not the most liked, the most trusted, or the most connected. It is the most aware. Because awareness cannot be manipulated. It cannot be triangulated. It cannot be weaponized against you. It is yours alone, and no silent infiltration can survive beneath the light of a truly awakened mind.